Fightful.com and FightfulMMA.com. It is take 3. I am attempting to make this work yet again. I hate to not do post shows for you guys. And YouTube, Google Hangouts, to put it mildly, YouTube doesn't care about Google Hangouts anymore. They want to push you towards the higher end encoder stuff, which I do have available. But man, it's so less interactive and just a pain to deal with sometimes. But it looks like we're going good now, so I don't have to delay the stream. I'm not promoting the stream just in case it craps out. So those of you who tune in right now live, you all get it live. Let's go ahead and get into this show. My God, it was a good show. UFC Calgary, I thought the main card lived up to the hype. At least the last 2 fights especially did. It was a packed card too. When you got Jose Aldo in a co-main event, you got Joanna Jędrzejczyk in third from the top. That's pretty good. Now I can't pretend that I expected the UFC to put on this kind of an effort, this kind of a card towards the end of their Fox run. I mean, they're done in, 5 months? The ESPN deal kicks off in January. So the UFC is really winding things down for Fox, and they brought the heat tonight. There were prospects, there were former champions, there were just interesting fights. There were, you had the story of revenge, you had all that stuff. And this was a pretty good show. Let's start from the bottom. We had Devin Powell unleashing what I often refer to as the old pants shitter liver kick on Herrera. Herrera came out really overwhelming and aggressive, but Powell threw some naked leg kicks, and Powell didn't seem to have any balance early on and crippled Herrera with a back-to-back series of liver shots that I thought looked outstanding. I mean, obviously they looked outstanding. They finished Herrera. Backstage, Joe Lozon told Fightful's James Lynch that he thought that his protege in Devin Powell was just a little bit too nice, and he had to get aggressive, and that's what paid off for him. That's what paid dividends, was Powell getting aggressive and going after Herrera in this way. Now, Devin Powell ruptured a testicle. Wow. And was almost about ready to get cut by the UFC until they offered him this late notice fight and ended up winning against Herrera, kept himself active. Imagine getting sacked after you get sacked. No thanks. Number 13, Nina Ansaroff outlasted number 12, Randa Marcos. Head over to Fightful.com, FightfulMMA.com. We have a Fightful Plays with Randa Marcos. It's a series. It's a very inconsistent video game series we do, but James Lynch went to the hotel room of Randa Marcos. They played some, I think it was Adventure Time on NES, Super NES. That's definitely worth a watch. It had Marcos won, it would be only her second pro winning streak. And she's alternated wins and losses in her last 11 fights, but you might as well make that 12 now. Ansaroff engaged to Amanda Nunes. She was in the corner. Ansaroff got out-wrestled in the first round and opened up her leg kicks in the second. Marcos would rush in an effort to refuse Ansaroff the range she needed to land those kicks. However, Ansaroff, after this fight, should have been on a 4-fight winning streak. She got hosed in that decision against Justine Kish, and many had her beating Lima too, but I didn't. After she was she earned that win. She screamed, "Yes, fuck!" Okay, sure. Number 9, Dustin Ortiz. Fightful spoke with him after his win, where he just head kicked through the lowered guard of Matheus Nicolau. Nicolau riding a 3-fight winning streak and was trying to stamp his place in the division as a contender, especially with the champion, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, fighting next week. And this was a win that Dustin Ortiz, in my opinion, had to win in order to keep himself relevant. And he did it. Because otherwise, I don't know if he was ever going to get that title shot. And it just takes 3, man. It just takes 3. And Dustin Ortiz knew that too. He knew it just takes 3 in that flyweight division. He threw that head kick in which it looked like Nicolau blocked. Daniel Cormier was so good on the call tonight. And he broke it down so well about if you have your arm up here to block, you need to have your far hand over here, not down where Nicolau had it, but up here to help guide that foot away from the head. That's high level breakdown, man, especially on the air as something's going on. Daniel Cormier is the best in the business, live on air, breaking things down as they go. I don't know if there's ever been anybody better than him. It really stood out to me, I think, at UFC 197 when he called the John Jones OSP fight, and he remained completely objective, despite the fact that they were embroiled in one of the biggest feuds in UFC history. So Ortiz now has the second longest flyweight winning streak, which is just 3, and it's behind Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, and the third most 125-pound wins in UFC history. That's fantastic stuff. Up next, we had Caitlin Chookagian at number 7, defeating number 3, Alexis Davis. By the way, Dustin Ortiz went into this fight number 9, and he defeated number 12, Nicolau. And I believe he was an underdog still, even though he was ranked higher. And he told us after the fight, us being Fightful.com, that that's normal for him. He usually is. But as I think Zane Simon of Bloody Elbow pointed out, is there any fighter or any athlete that sees themselves as anything but an underdog? They always think somebody's counting them out because somebody probably is. And that's probably, I mean, I know that I unfortunately hear criticisms much louder than praise. And that's something that, personally, I've had to overcome. Imagine that magnified 1,000, 100,000 times, probably most of these athletes. They always hear people trashing them. I trash a lot of these guys for a living. So I'm sure they do. Caitlin Chookagian, number 7, outpointed number 3, Alexis Davis. I thought Chookagian won a nice technical battle. We're going to see a lot of this in the UFC flyweight division over the next year, which is top 3 to 5 fighters getting beaten by relative newcomers. Even though Chookagian isn't that much of a newcomer, she still isn't. She's not as established. You have the Liz Carmouches and the Alexis Davises who came down from the bantamweight division and had fights with Ronda Rousey. But when I say that Chookagian's new, I mean that she wasn't a pro fighter a little over 4 years ago. And she wasn't in the UFC about 25 months ago. She debuted in July 2016 and has went 4-1. And many thought that she should have beaten Carmouche too. Or not Carmouche, rather. The Aldana fight, she had that one in the bag. But, losing to Liz Carmouche in this division is okay. But when this division has Davis, Roxanne Modafferi, and Lauren Murphy in the top 6, this is going to happen. If you want a good fight out of Caitlin Chookagian, you have to push the pressure and the pace, and Davis did that, but she couldn't win. Because if you push the pressure and the pace, you'll get a good fight out of Chookagian, but you'll also get picked apart at range, which she's so very, very good at. She is one that you have to watch, but she's not doing herself any favors by not finishing anybody. She didn't finish a ton of people outside of the UFC. I know that she had a couple of knee knockouts and she beat Sajara Eubanks, and that's a nice win to have. But you have to finish at some point. And through her first 5 fights, she hasn't. And she hasn't won any fight of the night bonuses on her way to getting 5 decisions either. Ariane says, Sean, thanks for the post show. Really appreciate it. Hey, guys, when those first 2 streams messed up, I thought about calling it a night. And I was like, you know what? I got one thing I'm supposed to do, and that's bring you guys a post show. And damn it, I'm not going to take this job for granted ever. So thank you guys, those of you who still managed to fight through the trash and join me. John McDessie, interview with him up at Fightful.com right now after his fight. He went to war with Ross Pearson and won. They were doing Ross Pearson no favors here, giving him the Canadian and Canada. It was a war, and it was one that McDessie won pretty easily. But my favorite part is for him, pretending to have mercy. Those guys who pretend like they're beating up their opponents a little bit more than they were. When Matt Brown was beating up, I think, Pete Sell, and he was calling for the end of the fight, that was justified. McDessie calling for the end of the fight here was not. And he's pointing, come on, ref, stop the fight. Then Ross Pearson tosses him flat on his ass. That was great. McDessie has won 3 of 4. Pearson has lost 5 of 6. And Pearson is not a perennial bonus contender, even though this was a great fight. I loved it. Ross Pearson's the type of guy, man, even if he gets cut, and they like him in the UFC. They really do like him. He'll land in Bellator almost immediately. That's what he'll do. He'll end up in Bellator or in Ryzen, and he'll fight Melvin Gillard 6 times. That's just the way it is. Ian Cutelaba has more in the gas tank than Anti-Gulov, number 15. Cutelaba came out with the Bret Hart gimmick. I'm talking the shades, everything. The music. Didn't give the shades to a kid, though. That's a no-no. Now, he healed Bret Hart after that. Bret Hart was there. He said that he's better than Bret Hart. It's what he told us at Fightful anyway. He wanted to prove he was better than Bret Hart in Calgary and inspire people. But you got to give the shades to a kid, or at least walk him over to Bret Hart and give them to him. Anti-Gulov lands a takedown but gets really tired and doesn't have the energy to finish the round. That is a terrible sign. He got up and ate a bunch of knees and elbows in the clinch and got finished. Cutelaba even wore the sunglasses after the win. That was a miserable performance by Anti-Gulov and that anti-gas tank he had on him. That was sad. An ugly state of affairs that was. Cutelaba is probably going to replace Anti-Gulov, who Cutelaba's won 3 out of 4. Anti-Gulov ends his 4+ year winning streak with this, and I can't believe that's the same guy. Cutelaba is going to replace him in the rankings at number 15. And I would imagine that Cutelaba will get Pedro, a Cummins, a Serkinov. I think it's too soon for Shogun to even talk about stuff like that, but he's going to get one of those guys from 10 to 15. I think Tyson Pedro would be a good one. I think Cajun Johnson probably gets cut after this, though, and that's unfortunate. Cajun Johnson, who had won 4 in a row, or I think 4 in a row after this, gives birth to the 4-fight winning streak of Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev, who John Anik and DC were putting over as a potential future championship title contender in this fight. And to me, I just didn't see any way that Cajun Johnson would win. He was one of my I'll put 5 on it. But I didn't think Makhachev was going to lose this, and he didn't. After Johnson tried to use his footwork, it just wasn't happening. Makhachev took Johnson down to the ground and tapped him fairly easily with an armbar. Set it up, peeled it out, extended the elbow, and that was that. Johnson has been very outspoken. I mean, he kind of crashed a CM Punk interview a couple years ago and talked shit while he was injured and on the shelf, but has also been an advocate of Project Spearhead, which is Leslie Smith's thing. And he told us at Fightful.com that she was fired illegally. So I can't imagine that he's done himself any big favors for the UFC, and they certainly did not do him any favors either. And he didn't bitch about it either. He could have bitched about this matchup, but when you won 4 in a row, you want these fights. Even though Makhachev isn't ranked, he was a highly ranked or highly touted prospect. And now he has won 5 of 6. He's won 4 in a row. His one loss is like under 2 minutes, Adriano Martins. And since then, Martins has gotten bounced from the UFC and lost his Fight Nights Global fight. So, I mean, you got to believe that if Makhachev had that one back, he would get it done. He's got Khabib Nurmagomedov in his corner. He calls out Brock Lesnar after the fight. Yeah, we've not heard that one before. Watch more UFC, man. Mendez did this a couple weeks ago. Hakeem Dawodu outclassed Austin Arnett. Dawodu got one of the best pops I've heard in MMA. That was outstanding and deafening. He got some early leg kicks, but in round 2, Arnett started to discover that Dawodu didn't really have a vision for straight right punches. But that didn't stop Dawodu. He hit leg kicks and hooks to the body at will and ended up taking this. And for Dawodu, that's good. He needed that bounce back win after he got signed and lost really quickly to Danny Henry in England. And they gave him the benefit after 8 fights unbeaten in World Series of Fighting. He was a World Series of Fighting product that when he reached his apex, didn't leave. He missed a year. So it was it was the right type of fight for him to get here in his hometown, a good bounce back. And I mean, he's beaten some guys. He's beaten Steven Siler. That's his biggest win. But Austin Arnett was the right bounce back for him, and he's getting it done. 27 years old used to be where you had to really make it happen. But now the prospects are kind of emerging a little bit later at times, so he'll be fine. Speaking of, Jordan Meehan, 28 years old, but has fought 43 times that we know of, probably closer to 45. And after it looked like he was done, he hadn't won in 3.5 years until he beat Eric Silva. And then he turns right back around and beats Alex Morono. So he's going to be in the UFC for the foreseeable future. And for all those fights that ended early, that ended fast, ended in the first round, in the first minute, early in his career, he's going the distance his last 4. And he's putting the work in, man. Jordan Meehan, they were just swinging and was wild. It was absolute garbage technique that sometimes evolved into a powerful takedown from Jordan Meehan that showed how good he could be on the ground. In the third round, Morono tries to pull a guillotine but can't get it done and ends up exhausted. And they interviewed Jordan Meehan, and it's a good thing that Fox cut off his interview because you wouldn't want the Fox broadcast to bleed over into the Fox broadcast. Jordan Meehan gets it done, man. And Alex Morono, I get the feeling he's probably done. His one win in his last 4 fights is against Josh Berkman. That's not saying a lot. He has a no contest in there, but Nico Price tested positive for marijuana, and who gives a shit about that? Who cares? Main card. Alex Hernandez answered a lot of questions. Number 13, Alex Hernandez defeated OAB. Whew. I expected Hernandez to come out and fight like he was invincible, and he does, and quickly realized that OAB was a more experienced fighter. However, OAB very weirdly gave away his top control by pulling guard. And for some reason, Mark Goddard bailed him out on a stand-up. A knee right in the penis stops the action, but Hernandez comes right back with a big combo and a takedown. He wins the decision. And this was a big test for him after the quick KO of Beneil Dariush. Alex Hernandez, who revealed to Fightful.com recently that he would be added to the UFC 3 game. We needed to see him in this type of performance. Knocking out Beneil Dariush is impressive. And we've not seen Dariush since then. But, I mean, to be fair, that was Dariush's 3rd straight fight that he hadn't won. Should he have been in the top 15 at that point? I don't know. But it was definitely the fight that took him out of it. And before that, Dariush had some really great wins. Michael Johnson, Magomedov, James Vick, Jim Miller. Just real good ones. But couldn't cut it at the upper levels. But Hernandez needed to face a guy like OAB and go the distance with him. We needed to see that he could do that. We needed to see that he could sustain this over 3 rounds. And not only did he sustain it, I thought that he looked even better in the 3rd round. He was very well conditioned. We do have an interview with Aubin Mercier up at Fightful.com and Alex Hernandez. Virtually everybody on the card. James Lynch is there in Calgary getting work done. But I like this. And, man, Aubin Mercier, he's not one you can sleep on. This was a big win. This is a way bigger win than Beneil Dariush, in my opinion. Because even though Aubin Mercier didn't have the ranking, He had won 7 of his last 8, and even including tough, 9 out of 11. That's insane in that division. Can't get that done a lot. Alex Hernandez is going to get a pretty good name next, I think. If I were Alex Hernandez, I'd probably aim for an Ally Aquinta, an Anthony Pettis maybe. Maybe an Edson Barboza. He wants 6-10. Let him go for it. Then we had the 3 big fights. Number 1, Joanna Jędrzejczyk was just better than number 5, Tecia Torres. First off, I've mentioned this in the past, how I would love the UFC to ban their fighters from saying, they've never fought anybody like me. Now, when you say that against a rookie or somebody who's a flash in the pan, that's one thing. But when Tecia Torres says that about Joanna Jędrzejczyk, one of the most successful female fighters of all time, well, she never fought anybody like me. Yeah, okay. Got those exclusive interviews with Jędrzejczyk and Torres up on FightfulMMA.com too. This was a must-win for either woman to remain in the title discussion at 115. That being said, had Joanna lost this fight or won this fight, she could move up to 125 pounds and contend there. You don't think UFC would love to put on Valentina Shevchenko against Joanna on a pay-per-view? That's a good fight. Not happening yet, though. Joanna is very stubborn in saying that she wants to regain her championship. And I get it, man. Like, I could understand why she would want to do that. But when you've lost 2 in a row and you're painting yourself into a corner here, you want the title shot, but man, you lost 2 in a row. You got starched the first time. Almost nobody gave you the second fight. I think 72% gave it to Namajunas, and even a greater percentage of the MMA media scores were for Joanna, or for Rose Namajunas, rather. It's just, you're painting the UFC into a corner to where it's going to create conflict between you and them. Meanwhile, all you got to do is say, I'm going to 125. And when Shevchenko beats Nico Montano, you get that title shot now. I mean, you can, especially with a win, you can do that. You can call that shot. So the first round featured Joanna winning the clinch battle and stuffing takedowns, even with her back against the cage, which I thought was surprisingly effective. She's able to saw people up with those elbows and knees and was able to find good angles for those. Torres is able to get inside here and there, but emptied her cupboard and did not have anything for the range of Joanna. Just nothing for the range of Joanna. And that's what we talked about on the Holy Smokes MMA podcast. It goes live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. I did put 5. I put 5 on it on Torres, but I mean, you almost have to with odds that crazy. But I said eventually it was going to be the range and the clinch of Joanna, and that's what did it, man. That's her game. That's what she's so good at. And the thing is, Torres is really good at that too, but she's honestly still fighting a 125er there. And I think that's one of the issues that she ran into long ago. Co-main event, this was an awesome fight. Whoo, boy. By the way, give us a follow over at Fightful MMA on Twitter. That's where you can see exclusively our MMA stuff, our MMA stories. A good time over there. Also, I do the UFC rankings breakdown on FightfulSelect.com. It is our premium service. We give you all the good free stuff here at Fightful.com. But if you want some extras, just us going beyond and beyond, that's a good one. I'm going to release this week's UFC rankings breakdown free to non-subscribers as a preview, because this is just going to be a shitstorm of changes in the UFC rankings. Because you look at it, number 1 defeated number 5 in women's straw weight, so Torres is going to fall. You have Alex Hernandez, he might be jumping up. You have Kutalaba, he's going to replace Antigulov. You have the number 7 straw weight defeating the number 7 flyweight defeating number 3. You have Ortiz beating Nicolau. You have Ansarov over Marcos, and then you have that main event. But this is Aldo's first non-title fight in 9 years. What I expected was Aldo chewing through Stevens with leg kicks or Stevens countering a leg kick to knock Aldo out. The former happens, and then the latter almost happens. Stevens started to hunt Aldo down after it looked like Aldo got hurt on a leg kick. But to me, the most dangerous Jose Aldo is a hurt Jose Aldo. However, Jeremy Stevens doesn't throw anything unless he thinks it's going to knock you out. He doesn't throw a lot of setup stuff. So Aldo's able to maintain his composure, and he had just stopped throwing leg kicks. The ones that he found so much success with, he just stopped throwing them. That's why it leads me to believe that he's hurt. And then we get the old pants shitter part 2. You know, I love a good body strike. And this one looked like it could have hit with the liver or the floating rib. Jose Aldo just rears back, sets it up, and heaves that left hand right into the body of Jeremy Stevens, and Stevens crumples. I talk about this in my pro wrestling podcast all the time. Somebody needs to do this. Somebody needs, besides Ronda Rousey, she's the only one. She's the only one that knows to do it. This was fantastic. This was Jose Aldo backed into a corner, and he says, all right, guy, let's go. And he threw it. Jose Aldo told Fightful.com that he took this fight because Jeremy Stevens puts on good fights. Jeremy Stevens is a big name, and he respects Jeremy Stevens for the way that he fights. I respect Jeremy Stevens for the way that he fights after this. He was a punchline a couple years ago. Who the fuck is that guy? He was a punchline. In loss, he's not a punchline, man. He still wanted to fight. And the guy still knocked Josh Emmett and Doo Ho Choi dead in their fights. And if you said this was fight of the night, I wouldn't disagree with you. The guy is just, I think he's like 8, 9 bonuses deep in the last decade. Been in the UFC since 2007. His first opponent was Dean Thomas. Remember him? Probably not. Because he retired like 5 years ago. He beat Rafael Dos Anjos in 2008. Got a lot of respect for Jeremy Stevens and the way that he has just reinvented himself at featherweight. Yeah, it bounced back after missing weight in 2015. It's not happened to him since then. He's been a model citizen since then. And I know that he didn't like the stoppage. It was a good stoppage. And Jose Aldo finishing him the way that he did. You haven't seen Jeremy Stevens get finished at featherweight. Ever. I mean, he's went to decisions. Nobody's been able to finish him at featherweight. Not a lot of people were finishing him, knocking him out, period, at lightweight. I think Eve Edwards did. That was it. Got submitted a couple times, so that speaks volumes for Jose Aldo. As for what I think is next for Jose Aldo, Dana White did say that Max Holloway was doing better, but he's going to need some time, man. Now, to me, Aldo's got to win at least 3 in a row to get back in the title picture. He does. But God, man, who does Aldo fight? He can't fight Mendez. He beat him twice. He can't fight Edgar. He beat him twice. He can't fight Stevens. He just beat him. Josh Emmett, I think he's coming off of a loss. Yeah? To Jeremy Stevens. Korean Zombie's all booked up, and he's already beat him. Moicano's booked up next week. Maybe him if he emerges victorious over Swanson. Mirsad Bektic? Maybe. Is that the kind of name you want to throw in there with Aldo? Well, a lot of people will say Brian Ortega. But what if Aldo wins? You running Holloway versus Aldo out there again? Enjoy your 120,000 buys. I don't know if you want to risk the Ortega-Holloway match at quite possibly the expense of it to put Aldo back in that title picture with Holloway. Now, if Ortega beats Holloway, yeah, sure, give Aldo a title fight. Not a lot of options at 145. Not a lot of options. It's rough. It's rough, man. But Jose Aldo, man, did you see the emotion? Just the thrill in victory? Man, that was a special moment for him. He's been around so long. And for him to have that type of reaction after winning, it's his first finish in 5 years. Korean Zombie was his last, and Korean Zombie's shoulder was hanging out of his socket. This guy's been fighting since 2004. Good for him. Main event, Dustin Poirier gained a measure of revenge against Eddie Alvarez. Whoo, boy. This was a good one. Dustin Poirier, number 4, beat number 3, Eddie Alvarez. They will jump places in the rankings. We're going to talk about this lightweight division. Oh, man, it's getting crazy. So, Eddie Alvarez apparently doesn't know the damn rules of MMA. Or his team doesn't. Because apparently they called for him to throw this elbow on the ground that quite possibly could have cost him the fight. Very, very curious. Eddie Alvarez told Daniel Cormier that he planned on throwing leg kicks because he didn't think that Poirier was going to be recovered from the Gaethje fight in time, and that Gaethje told him to throw leg kicks. Of course, Dustin Poirier jumps out of the gate and almost drops Alvarez with a leg kick. Alvarez fought out of a really nice guillotine choke and ends up with his own neck crank, but it doesn't get the job done, and Poirier was throwing those short little punches there. The first round was really a feeling out aspect. The end of the fight comes when Alvarez threw a 12-6 elbow from the ceiling to the floor to the shoulder of Poirier. Poirier said it didn't hurt him, but because of that, Alvarez loses his position. He would use this as an excuse after the fight and say, oh, but they stood it up. To me, you cannot complain about the ref making a bad call and then complain when he does make the right call. That's 2 fights these 2 guys have had against each other, and 2 times Eddie Alvarez has thrown illegal strikes. If you put John Jones back in the cage with Matt Hamill, and John Jones still kicked the living shit out of Matt Hamill, and then while doing it, he kneed Matt Hamill to the spine and got DQ'd, I'd say, all right, John, sorry. You had your chance to rectify that weird situation you were in, but you don't know the rules still. Eddie Alvarez didn't know the rules still, and that's weird. 12-6 sucks, but it's a rule. As soon as they get back up, Poirier goes crazy and just throws a Killer Instinct style ultra combo and beats the brakes off of Eddie Alvarez. I'm talking elbows, knees, punches. Amazing. Poirier took exception to Alvarez saying that he was a quitter in the cage and says, no, I'm not about that. I'll die in there. I live for this. And he is one of the realest guys. He takes himself dangerously seriously, but has a really good heart too. So Poirier emerges victorious. He's there, man. He's there. So, what do you have here? You got options. That's what you got. You have a lightweight division. They are putting Khabib and Conor McGregor together. It's going to happen. By the way, hilarious today. TMZ posted about a minute of Conor McGregor signing autographs, and he says thank you, and they say, can't wait to see you back in the cage, and then answers no more of their questions, which he can tell when it's a TMZ camera, answered none of their questions. So what was their headline? Conor McGregor gives us a death stare when we ask him about Khabib's manager. Jabronis. Khabib, Conor McGregor, that's the fight that's got to happen. They believe that Tony Ferguson is back before the end of the year. We'll see. If that's the case, there are two options for Tony Ferguson. Kevin Lee, you could run that back and I'd feel okay with it because Kevin Lee had staff. Or you got Dustin Poirier. That's it. Somebody's getting left out here. Somebody is getting left out in the cold. Poirier knows he's a fight away from a title shot. I think if Poirier fights a guy who was champion, but isn't champion now in Ferguson, he'll understand that. He'll see the benefit in that. Lee's right there, though, man. The top five in this division are going to be Khabib at champion, Ferguson 1, McGregor 2, Poirier 3, Lee 4, and Alvarez is going to drop probably to number 5. Somebody's getting left out. Kevin Lee, man, that staff, I think, hurt him because people will see that as him having a title opportunity and losing it. How about this one? By the end of the year, or within a couple months, the UFC could have 6 people who aren't champion, who lost their championship in the UFC without actually losing their championship, because Conor never lost, Tony Ferguson never lost, GSP never lost, Colby Covington hasn't lost his. We don't know what the status of the light heavyweight belt will be. It's a mess, man. It can be a real mess. John Jones never lost his championship. Ooh, gross. So the lightweight division is the meal ticket in the UFC, I think, right now. Kevin Lee is the star of the future. I mean, you hear GSP saying it. Dustin Poirier just had a great showing on Fox. Conor McGregor is Conor McGregor. And when I tell you Khabib is big in Russia, I can't quite put that into words. It's just how he is. And Tony Ferguson is the wild card there. Not quite a draw, but he fits with all these guys, except he does fit with all these guys because he's wanted to fight Conor forever. Him and Khabib, it's got to happen at some point. He's fought Kevin Lee, and they had that good fight. But like I said, there's the question of staff there. What happened? I don't know. The UFC lightweight division takes center stage. Big wins for Aldo. Big win for Joanna. Huge win for Dustin Poirier. People are sleeping on him. 10 UFC fights at lightweight. He has 1 loss. Amazing. Guys, follow me at Sean Ross Sapp. Follow us at Fightful MMA and Fightful Online. If you all don't visit FightfulMMA.com for your news, I suggest you do it. Click that little exclusives tab. We have interviews coming all the time. James Lynch is in Calgary doing work. We have videos all night long. We got a playlist going right now, UFC Calgary, including James Lynch playing games with these people. He's interviewing them backstage, interviewed them before the show. Just a ton of great stuff coming out of James Lynch and Calgary and just wherever he is, really. Holy Smokes MMA podcast, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. We have a host of pros picks that we air on those shows. Next week, UFC 227, Mighty Mouse versus Cejudo, Dillashaw versus Garbrandt. I will not be here for that show. Jeremy Lambert's going to be doing the live articles. We've got David T's doing the live coverage. Big thank you to him for always doing great live coverage. James Lynch is going to be doing the post-show podcast. I will be out of town, but let's take a quick look at that card. Headlined by Dillashaw against Garbrandt. Don't think Garbrandt deserves that rematch. Whatever. Johnson against Cejudo. I do think Cejudo deserves his rematch, but really this show should be Johnson versus Dillashaw. Swanson, number 5 against number 10, Moicano. You have Pollyanna Viana against JJ Aldrich. This is the UFC trying to push these two girls. Thiago Santos, number 13 against Kevin Holland. Whatever. On the FX prelims, number 9, Pedro Munoz against number 14, Brett Johns. You have Ricky Simone against Montel Jackson. We did interview Ricky Simone before the fight change. Number 10, former title challenger Betch Correia takes on number 12, Irene Aldana. You have Matt Sales against Shaman Marias. You have Alex Perez against Jose Shorty Torres. Of course, we have the inside track on Jose Shorty Torres. Showdown Joe is his broadcast, or not his broadcast partner, calls so many of his fights. I think did some broadcasting with him. That's a big one for Fight Pass. Ricardo Ramos against Kyung Ho Kang. Danielle Taylor against Wiley Zhang. And then Marlon Vera against Buren. Decent show next week. It's probably going to maybe crack 120, 130,000 buys. But we'll be here to cover it, guys. FightfulMMA.com. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you for those of you who checked it out. Despite the technical difficulties, I'm working on it. Anything I can do, I will do. I'm here for you guys. We're out.